Morning. So, as it was announced yesterday, we will start first with the video, the last video, then Stefano will deliver a presentation on stability policing and the role of stability policing in cultural property protection, and then there will be the breakdown in the panels. Enjoy.
If I may, the first thing I'd like to, first of all, good morning. The agenda has changed a little bit, so the one that you have is not up to date because we moved the presentation to this morning. It's going to be very easy. We just cancel one of the coffee breaks, and after my presentation, we will immediately break up into the groups and start working. And we are ready for the ICOM presentation. Ivan, we are ready for the video. Good try. Excellent.
Dear organizers of this Cultural Property Protection Conference, thank you for your kind invitation to participate in this important event. It would have been a pleasure to be with you in Vicenza, but unfortunately I could not attend in person. Dear participants, for those of you who are unfamiliar with our organization, the International Council of Museums, we were established the aftermath of the Second World War, and we are the successor to the League of Nations Museum programs. ICOM was established in 1946, and this year we are proud to celebrate our 75th anniversary. One of the main aims of ICOM was and is to create support museum professionals through a network of museum professionals across the globe and across borders, without distinction of national or political affiliation. Since our founding, our network has grown exponentially, and today ICOM counts almost 50,000 members worldwide in over 140 countries and territories across the globe. The character of our missions has also changed immensely over the decades, and we now work also to use the experience and expertise of the museum professionals to support museums and communities to protect heritage from a variety of threats, such as theft, accident, natural disaster, or armed conflict. Though we have formal cooperation and links with intergovernmental organizations such as Unesco, UNIDROIT, Interpol, and ICOM, our status as non-governmental organization is very useful because it allows us to work outside of political channels and assist in areas where other governmental actors could not. A perfect example of this is ICOM's recent work in Nagorno-Karabakh, where we could quickly able to liaise with our national committees in the region in order to identify as soon as possible the needs of museums in the region. Given the political ramification of the conflict at the time, such dialogue would have been much more complex and tense at the political level. We can also mobilize in times of disaster, including the recent explosion in Beirut, where ICOM sent a mission to inspect the damage together with ICOM Lebanon, our national committee in Lebanon, and subsequently began coordination with ICOMOS and ALIF to help rebuild. As you can see, ICOM and the museum community have witnessed firsthand the threats that many countries face when they are seeking to protect their cultural heritage. And it is for this reason that we were concerned with the capacity of states and governments to pass protective legal instruments that could be effective in safeguarding cultural heritage at risk. Broader ratification and better implementation of the existing legal framework should be the aim that to be pursued to protect heritage. This includes the 1954 Hague Convention and its first and second protocols, as well as the 1970 UNESCO Convention and the 1995 UNIDROIT Convention focusing on the fight against illicit trafficking of cultural goods. We all know there are barriers to ratification or strong implementation, but the threats facing cultural heritage that are now all too common are sad proof that there can be no more complacency with regards to heritage protection. At ICOM, we have developed normative tools to help strengthen the capacity of our museum professionals to face these threats. The ICOM Code of Ethics for Museum is ICOM's most important tool. It guides the museum professional in their daily work, and all members of ICOM are required to follow it. It also requires museum professionals to implement the policies of these three conventions, as well as many of the other international cultural conventions that exist in their daily work. ICOM's normative tools and guidelines are produced in the logic of complementary and in alignment with the existing laws, but also in expanding them on the basis of ethical practice. But ethical practice alone does not have legal grounds. So that means the existing practical tools sometimes need to be enshrined into national laws. Alongside this normative tool, our museum professionals have developed practical tools which can be used by the non-heritage professionals to help protect heritage from risk in a variety of situations, both in times, conflict, and peace. ICOM's red list of cultural objects at risk are designed to highlight the categories of objects that are subject to smuggling and illegal trade and that are often found on the illicit market, in spite of being protected by national and international legislation. They classify the endangered categories of archaeological objects or works of art in the most vulnerable areas of the world in order to prevent them from being sold or illegally exported. These museum tools are transmitted to and used by police and customs officials worldwide. They are also distributed to museum auction houses and art dealers. Red lists are drafted following specific scientific guidelines. The type of object shown on a red list met 3 criteria. They must come from a site or region that are being victim of theft and looting. They must be protected by legislation, hence the importance of a robust legal framework. And most importantly, they must be in demand on the art and antiquities market. It always comes back to the demand for such precious objects. And this is why we need to make sure we hold the art and antiquities trade accountable. Thousands of objects have been identified, seized, and returned thanks to ICOM Red List, and the biggest success stories followed clear administration decision and political will to implement the tools at borders and airports. In one case of rigorous use of the Red List for Afghanistan, the UK returned 1,500 objects to the Kabul Museum following strict control of incoming merchandise. This is one Red List used in one point of entry. We now have 18 Red Lists concerning the cultural objects of over 45 countries so far. So if all the hubs in the world could implement them, let's imagine the extraordinary successes we could reach. But the illicit trafficking of cultural property is not something that happens only in times of conflict. Countries at peace are also equally susceptible to it, and illicit trafficking is now recognized as one of the most pressing international security threats. Last month, we at ICOM launched our 18th Red List, and it's the first to focus on the European continent. The Red List for Southeast Europe is a tremendous achievement by ICOM's experts, but it should also serve to remind that all countries are threatened by illicit trafficking. The threats facing museums and cultural heritage have only been exacerbated by the recent COVID-19 global pandemic. ICOM is even more close to the museum community, and we have used our network to entertain the extent of the global pandemic on the museum community. Up to 94% of museums were closed due to the pandemic, and with up to 84% of museum professionals working from home, the vast majority of museums worldwide, around 80%, had to maintain or increase the security to protect the collection. In some regions of the world, these increases were considered insufficient and museums were at great risk. In some cases, despite these increases, museums still suffered from theft, as demonstrated in the UK and the Netherlands last year. Indeed, only a year ago, ICOM, Unesco, Interpol, and the ICO concluded that the pandemic and the associated measures to ensure the health and safety of citizens have in fact weakened security from museum and archaeological sites, and consequently, there has been an increase in illegal excavation, theft, and trafficking worldwide. Given these worrying statistics and trends, ICOM and Interpol have issued recommendations to ensure cultural heritage security during the lockdown. Since we at ICOM have been working on this subject since our very founding, and with our experiences in mind, ICOM was honored to be invited to the first G20 Cultural Ministers meeting in Rome this year, and our work in tackling illicit trafficking and the expertise of museums was expressly set into the Minister Declaration as a model to follow. As you can see, ICOM's policy work is strong and recognized, but we do not forget our operational role at field level. We are indeed convinced that preventative action is vital. With the generous support of the Alice Foundation, ICOM's Heritage Protection Department executed in 2020 operational project with several museums in Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Mali, and Nigeria, which aims to improve and enhance museum security, both through the reinforcement of existing museums to protect collection, and also by installing new security systems and procedures in museums that were under threat. Preventive measures, which are key to protecting cultural heritage against theft, were also enhanced in this project. Staff capacities were bolstered through training programs, and documentation processes for the inventorying of collection were digitized. These measures are simple but vital, and they will go a long way to protecting these museums. Furthermore, though this project focused on a selected number of museums at risk, the project have the potential to act as templates for other capacity enhancing programs throughout the region. As a representative of the international museum community, ICOM also places the enhancement of professional standards through training like those described above at the heart of its missions. Considering capacity building as a rapidly increasing priority, ICOM regularly implements and supports training workshops and programs. These workshops are an occasion for experts to transmit their knowledge and share their know-how with their colleagues from other countries, with an aim of reinforcing the professional skills of museum professionals in a wide range of areas: inventory, collection management, exhibition, safety and security, education, marketing, disaster risk reduction, ethics, and more. The workshops are organized to offer an opportunity to share ideas and experience in hope of contributing to sound and scientific collection management procedures, to the sufficient display and utilization of collection, and to the effective communication among museums and between museum and society, enabling museums to fulfill their functions and value, as well as support their increasing social role. We also consider it as a priority to ensure we do everything we can to strengthen the capacities of law enforcement agents around the world in order to support their pivotal role in identifying cultural objects of dubious provenance that could originate from illicit excavation or illegal trade. And we recently hosted a capacity development workshop with UNESCO, which aimed to demonstrate and transmit the experience of museum professionals and non-museum professionals, including police and customs officers, with an aim to protecting heritage. The norms, tools, and action I have just described to you are only a fraction to potential that ICOM has at its disposal. Indeed, since we have been working on this subject, we were perhaps one of the most experienced and important NGOs working to protect heritage. However, I must stress that we cannot do this alone, exactly as you cannot do this alone either. The threats that face cultural heritage are vastly complex and understudied, and we are learning more and more every day. If there is one thing that we have learned at ICOM is that it is a transnational threat and it needs a transnational response. ICOM is here, ready and willing to work together towards a global response, because it is only together that we can hope to protect heritage across the globe. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you an excellent conference.
By now you know me, Stefano Bergonzini, Chief Warrant Officer in the Carabinieri, Stability Policing Center of Excellence, working in doctrine. I have two goals I set for myself this morning. One is to give you a very concise and clear idea what the SPCOE is, and the second one, what stability policing is. And then I'll give you some material, some ideas, some provocation even, for your SWOT analysis later on. And that is the part about stability policing in cultural property protection. And this is what I've done for more than 10 years of my life. I had the honor and the pleasure to visit beautiful countries, not always in the best conditions. Don't you love technology where it fails? Okay. Plan B, PDF. Sorry, that will be the preview of a lot of beautiful pictures, but that's how it's going to be. What are we going to talk about? Stability policing COE. Stability policing, something about cultural property protection, legal and conceptual framework, threats to CP, some challenges, and then the final takeaways. And it's going to be very, very practical. What is a COE? In 2010, NATO representatives realized that it was not possible for all nations to actually participate in all this research and development. So they came up with the idea of smart defense. Center of Excellence are one of those work streams. One nation, let's put our case, Italy proposes to Allied Command transformation, that it offers that it has some expertise, in our case about policing in crisis areas and police capacity building. Allied Command transformation is then checking if other centers of excellence are actually working about that. If nobody else does anything in the remit, you get the go-ahead, and it says, okay. Perfect. Sorry, you got the pictures now. So, this is Italy, approaches ACT, we have this idea, we have this capacity, our experience. Are you interested? Let's check. Nobody else is doing it. Yes. Italy, are you really committed about that? Yes, because we give you infrastructure, we're going to give you money, and we're going to give you people, experts in this field, that we are paying as a nation, as a framework nation. Accreditation process, and then you have a NATO accredited center of excellence. This accredited is important. The last thing that is missing is the steering committee. One representative for each nation. They define what the program of work is and how much money their nations is going to invest in that. We are not part of NATO command structure or NATO force structure. What does that mean? NATO is only our customer. They request us products and we deliver to them. That also means that your institution or you could actually ask us to deliver products for you. This is how we're structured. The only thing that is important for you, we have a directorate. They are the ones to implement the desires of the steering committee, the program of work. In the branches, we are the working bees, we are realizing those products. The part in gray is the money that is paid by the framework nation, in our case by Italy. The Stability Policing Center of Excellence is a multinational military body. You see 9 countries participating, the services. Hub of expertise for innovation and transformation in the field of stability policing, of course. We do develop concepts and doctrine and review them. Could be about CPP. We prepare training curricula and courses, and we are preparing an online course about SP in CPP. And we work the lessons learned cycle. What is stability policing? Let me give you a new approach, possibly way easier. It is a concept, first of all. NATO decides to go to a country. In that country, the populace, the host nation populace, has police-related security needs. Their police could be inefficient, could be unwilling to perform them, to deliver those services. It could be absent, like in Kosovo. Other international organizations cannot intervene, blocked by a veto. They cannot intervene quickly enough. Other forces can intervene, but they don't have the expertise. And now we have a gap. That gap is the policing gap. What does stability policing do? It bridges that gap. I participated from the very beginning in 1998 with the first deployment. I was in one of those first cars that drove into Bosnia. I was in Kosovo in 1999, and I also deployed to Iraq when we opened the mission in 2003. That was not a NATO mission. And again, it's not only a NATO thing. Other international organizations are also performing stability policing. They might call it in a different way. They might perform it in a different way. It took some years to NATO, till 2016, to come up with a publication that finally spoke about stability policing and gave us a definition. And this is actually the real definition. It starts with police-related activities to reinforce or temporarily replace the indigenous police, to restore and uphold public order and security, rule of law, and protection of human rights. What are the missions? 2 missions, replacement or reinforcement. Replacement, if there is no police, or the police is not capable of doing it, NATO takes over. In CPP terms, that means we are checking the markets, we are driving in front of the museum, we are looking at the site of the excavation to make sure illicit activities don't happen. If you look at reinforcement, I'll give you some examples. In a monetary capacity, I drive out, check what my colleagues in the location are doing. They are not checking the markets, they are not guarding their museums. I observe that, I write a report, that is the monitoring. In a mentoring capacity, I go to my counterpart, the police commander of the station, of the province, and tell him, sir, your people are not doing this, but you have cultural property. Maybe you should implement it in your normal police activities. As an advisor, I can go to the top level, Minister of Interior, and tell you, sir, you have a problem. Your country is rich in cultural property. There is a lot of attacks against it, but you don't have a specialized force. Why don't you introduce one? Yes, but that is complicated. How we can do that? To reform it. And we help you in actually developing that force. Yes, but where do we get the people? Well, we can help you with the training. And we can train your trainers so that you can keep on going on your own. The last thing is the partnering, when we deploy together with the local colleagues and make sure, one, that they do take care of cultural property. Second, that they're not stealing while they're doing it. So keeping an eye on them. Who are the SP actors? SP is an open club. The gendarmes are the best to actually conduct stability policing. Why? Well, first of all, because they are 100% military, so they are part of the military force. I have a military rank. If I mess up, I go to a court-martial. But my task has always been mostly focused on policing civilians. Remember the policing of civilians mindset that gives you that long term, like General Allenby yesterday. Because you have to stay there for a long time to solve the problems. You need to learn, think long term. The second actor is definitely the military police. They are part of the military. Traditionally, they check discipline of the force, but they have a police also capacity. They can perform stability policing. Other military forces, why wouldn't you put a company of infantry that is trained and equipped to actually guard the museum if there is a riot? Even non-military actors, international organizations, NGOs, contractors can participate. The mantra is that all can participate. Obviously, not all can do everything. Do you really believe that an infantry platoon commander can conduct an investigation, international, organized crime against terrorists who are actually trafficking in cultural property? Impossible. Something about the legal and conceptual framework. And I'm tapping in the presentation we had yesterday and possibly answering the question that you got yesterday. Yes, important conventions, you know them. Resolution, yes. War crimes. Applicable host nation law. And that applicable is very important. First of all, do we have a law? If not, maybe you should have them develop one. And we cannot apply any kind of law. Stability policing will never hand over somebody who we know is going to be executed because they robbed a piece of antiquities. Within NATO, policy of protection of civilians, people and objects, part of the bigger overarching theme of human security. There is an SP dimension. The community is the project. If you are not answering those needs of the community, your mission will fail. You will not be successful. We have a biostrategic directive, which is not a doctrinal document, like was said yesterday. Doctrine gives you principles, gives you guidelines you may not follow. A directive is a document that tells you exactly what you need to do. It gives you precise, prescriptive guidelines. And this document, unfortunately, we cannot share it. There is a little summary in the documents that you're going to find in your rooms for the SWOT analysis. And NATO thought about different points in training, in the missions, in the planning, in applying also stability policing. What are the threats to cultural property? Force majeure like earthquakes, central Italy, floods, Florence 66. Military action, willful or not willful. Well, you build your base inside a cultural site, and obviously sometimes it's going to happen. Vandalism. Criminal activities, organized, transnational. Terrorism, we heard it before. Logical threats. Think about the digital cultural property, archives. This leads me into a difficult theme within NATO, because we are not really understanding how to actually address these hybrid threats. It's the mixture of conventional and unconventional. Tank against tank, we are good at. The other things are more complicated. Lawfare, the use of law to actually conduct warfare. Non-linear warfare, fake news, using cyber, use of social media by Daesh. The threat has changed, and it has changed also against cultural property. We have a great example for that. Now, what is the role of stability policing in cultural property protection? What can SP do? Police capacity building, we had that. This has to be me. Proactive use of law to conduct warfare. I never liked being on the receiving end of warfare. I liked always to be on the attacking side, and as a military and police officer, I came up with the idea of offensive lawfare. That is as an overarching concept. How? Enforcing international and applicable host nation law to create effects on the adversary, on the enemy. And we have seen those two terms yesterday, as a police officer, as more within a military campaign. That is the definition that I came up with for legal targeting. So we can say that SP defeats enemies and adversaries with other means, policing means. Conversely, it protects cultural property with other means. AJP 322, our publication, does not contain CPP yet, but we are reviewing it and suggested that. We are writing a tactical publication, and you will find the extracts of this publication on your desks when you go to the rooms. There is CPP as a task, and we are also speaking of Stability Policing CPP specialized assets. What are some stability policing tasks? Very quickly. Crowd and riot control, in front to guard your museum, to protect your museum. Border control, who comes in, who comes out, what goes in and out. High-risk arrests. If you want to catch these terrorists or organized criminals, you cannot send an armed police officer to do that. Protect people and property. The director of the museum or a church, a monastery. Someone might say, but these are not police vehicles. Remember, also other military forces do perform stability policing if they are replacing the indigenous police. Critical site security, guarding the museum, at the same time preparing capacity. The community needs to take over. It is their cultural property. Criminal investigations and police intelligence, the two most important tasks of SP. Understanding and acting on who does what, when, where, and how. Where is the cultural property going, and where is the money going? Because we want to conduct the necessary surveillance, search, and then seize them back. These are actually my two drivers in Iraq in 2003. When you search and seize, I always tell my colleagues, look for the money, look for the cultural property, drugs, and weapons. They can often, you can find them at the same location. If you're looking for drugs, it might not be the main business that they're conducting. Crime scene management, to be able to conduct forensics. Biometrics, to have the automated systems to guarantee the identity, because at the end, we want to arrest people. Why? Counterterrorism, organized crime, smuggling, war crimes. Patrolling the internet is not yet a task for stability policing, but we are suggesting it in our tactical publications. Challenges, we have seen them yesterday. Let's go quickly through them. Even the museums don't know what they have. Lack of inventories. And there might be paper, there might be digital. You can use tools like IDR and ITPC to actually gather that information. There is a lack of information and of information exchange, and all of us are actually part of this lack. And being here, we want to address that. There is need for more international cooperation and more international police cooperation. Not even all the countries report to Interpol. Well, if you're not talking, how can we get information? More interagency cooperation, and now really your organizations are part of it. What are the key takeaways? And I'm going to conclude. Stability policing and cultural property protection brings police activities to the military campaign. It is about reinforcement and the replacement of indigenous police forces. It feeds the intelligence cycle. It is part of the comprehensive approach and interagency approach. Part of human security, protection of civilians, and fosters resilience. It does defeat enemies and adversaries and protects cultural property with other means. This concludes my presentation. I am open for your questions. Thank you.
So before giving the floor to David, who will be moderating the entire day, I open for any questions as asked by Stefano.
It's not a question, and I do beg your pardon. It's just an observation.
Alessandro, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Alessandro Di Stefano. I'm the Light Command Transformation Stability Policing Subject Matter Expert. I don't know if it was by coincidence or if it was done on purpose, but one of the photos you displayed us was about two of our colleagues who died in Afghanistan in 2003, performing their duty. For the international colleagues, in 2003, the Italian militaries faced the main loss of military personnel since the Second World War during the Nasiriyah attacks. It was a bombing attacks toward our base, and two of the guys...
Iraq,
sorry. And I was there, and I saved myself because of the coffee, because I was going to go to that base to bring the coffee to one of my soldiers, but then the coffee finished, so my driver took me to the other base, and that's the reason why I saved myself. And Stefano was with me over there, so I don't know if it was by coincidence, but I really thank you to have provided us with the picture of two of our, fellow colleagues who died in the theater. Sorry for bothering you with this issue, but it touched my feelings. Thank you.
Thank you. I left 4 days before.
so Dave, the floor is yours. And I will, after your introduction, I will leave.
Yes, so there have been some changes to the agenda, of course. So can we have, please, the new version of the agenda? Which, of course, I don't remember off by heart, so if it's not projected there, I also forgot what the agenda looks like. Yeah, so we will now start directly until 10 o'clock with the panel discussions. So I would like everyone to move in their respective rooms. So we have 4 rooms. This is Sala Palladio. The name of the room is written outside, so this is another room. That's another room, and the third room is Sala Trissino, is on the other side, down there. So you will have, so for the young disruptors that will support the moderators, we have Google Drive, the documents that we need and the PowerPoint templates are on Google Drive. We will have more or less 1 hour per topic, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Coffee break from 10 to 10:20, another coffee break 11:20 to 11:30. Be flexible, so if you see that you need to discuss a little bit more, don't worry. If you want to extend the coffee break, that's not a problem. We only have, let's say, a deadline. Please go down, scroll down. Can somebody please scroll down with the agenda? Thank you. So I would like to have everything done and dusted by 3 o'clock, because between 3 and 4 o'clock in every single working group we will have to rehearse the presentation, because the outcomes of the SWOT analysis will be presented tomorrow. Then there will be the cultural event at 4:30, and then at 7:30 we will have the official dinner here. So that concludes my intervention. So please.
So enjoy your breakout room now, so you can go to each room where you are designated to go.
Anche a distanza.
Sì, perfetto. Ok.
Poi domani mattina vedo alle 8:30 che ci devo.
Sì. Okay, so for this working group number one, can you please move a little bit closer here?